on this wonderful Saturday. For those of you who do not know me, I am Joni Goodman coming live to you from Illinois. And with me tonight, I have Russell Goodman, one of my sons.
Hi.
So I had asked you, because I know quite a few people I've gotten to know on Facebook have a child with autism or know of a child with autism. And I thought, what better way to hear it right from the horse's mouth?
Not a horse.
So Russell has agreed to answer some questions. And a brief history for us is we did not know Russell had autism. At 9 months, he got very, very sick. He was a baby that couldn't eat anything, couldn't drink anything. He was difficult.
Cool.
And so I believe he was probably 6 when we noticed it wasn't right. He wasn't walking at the normal times, talking. He was very quiet, unlike today. And so we finally went through things. At first, we thought ADHD because his brother does have ADHD, and it was not ADHD. The first thing that we were told that he does have was celiac. And so we had to put him on dairy-free, gluten-free, and then slowly we got dairy back in. Still wasn't fixing with the situation that we had ongoing. Still had no clue what it was. And we discovered he had autism. And as a parent, I was petrified. I knew how to deal with ADHD, but I didn't know how to deal with autism. And Russell taught me very quickly how to learn and deal with autism.
I taught you something?
And so one of the first questions
professional life you've done in a while
that we did have was, what would Russell most like to tell people about living with autism? So Russell,
something I'd like to tell people.
you have to speak up.
How much more speaking up?
There you go.
Okay, so apparently we're playing with fun audio. Sorry, this is gonna be completely unprofessional. This isn't my shtick. What would I most like to tell people? If you know someone has autism, just be blunt. 95% of the time, at least in my experience, we prefer that excessively. It's fairly hard to offend us in most cases. Just be blunt, and we'll either like you or we won't. That's kind of the long and short of it. If you start deciding to hide things behind your words or use fancy metaphors to try and sneak your point in, we're just gonna lose you.
And how is it to be in a social atmosphere such as high school or, in your case, college?
Oh, we ignore. Well, me personally, I ignore most people. Kind of just get my small group of friends and we roll with that, or at least I do. I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah, please understand this is Russell's viewpoint. There are several different levels of autism. We're very fortunate. Russell is verbal. Russell is become quite sufficient and learned how to live with his autism.
Although there's days you wish I wasn't verbal.
One question that I've noticed the older you've become is social cues.
Oh, I hate those. It's more or less just playing a game of you're supposed to know that this is happening, but no one's gonna say it's happening, which I find inane and a waste of everyone's time and effort. It's like trying to tell someone you don't like them, but using fancy and flowery language to get the point across. And 9 times out of 10, if I don't like you, I'm just gonna tell you I don't like you, and I'll move on with my life. And if I like you, I'll tell you I like you.
Why do you think, in your mind, because I know this has happened to you, not so much now, but when you were younger, why do people feel the need to bully kids with autism?
I don't know. Well,
Why do you think you had some bully issues in your younger years?
well, it because the thing with autism, at least to an extent, you tend to be very bad in certain locations and very good at others. And as anyone who excels in their chosen field or their hobby has found out, when you're doing much better than someone else in anything, they tend to become jealous. And if someone's jealous, they're going to mock you to try to feel better about themselves. At least in my personal experience.
Do you feel autism now that you're older? has given you a different outlook on society, or do you feel that you still have, can you, okay, scratch that one.
Well, yes, it has a different outlook on society. I could have told you from that from day one.
Yeah.
Like, I was asking questions that no one else was, and I was needing things explained that no one else was. It's a generic thing. It's looking through the world and with a different pair of glasses on instead. My glasses just happen to be a bit more black and white than everyone else's, or having strange connotations. You don't normally have a 12-year-old asking why this is bad instead of just accepting that it is bad. You needed to explain why this was happening. Why am I being punished for this? Why am I being rewarded for this? There's a lot of whys, and it's more infuriating than most children when they hit the lovely why stage. Because it doesn't just end at childhood, it continues on. I'm still asking people why. Why is this something that's offending you? Why is this a decision you made? Etc., etc. Another definite thing is at least I tend to remove some emotions from making decisions because it doesn't make sense. I'm making a decision based on logic and facts. I'm not going to make an emotional response to it.
And I will say the one thing that we as parents and his siblings had to get used to was Russell is black or white. He's getting a little bit better with the gray areas, but it's real light gray. But we have to be very black or white with Russell, and that's the only way that we can actually get through to him and communicate. Um, I personally, and I'm going to ask Russell his opinion, the best thing that I think we ever did for Russell, and it was actually suggested to us, was to have him do wrestling. And I want him to explain how wrestling changed him and what changes he noticed with wrestling.
Okay, we have different stories on how I got into wrestling, but I guess that's a thing for another day. He's over here getting parental advice on I should go join it. I get a bet for $10 and I'm jumping in with both feet. Lovely. Wrestling, at least for me, was cathartic in a extreme degree because you always feel pent up or restrained, and you always want to be moving and doing something, and you don't get something that's more physically demanding normally, at least at a younger age than wrestling, because it is literally just throwing someone your own weight around a like 8 foot circle for 6 or so minutes, and trying your best to shove them somewhere you want them to be, and them shoving you somewhere they want you to be. It's just very cathartic and relaxing, and I'm not even sure if that's just an autism thing or just generally. And then it just helps you adapt to thinking on your feet because the guy isn't just going to wait there and let you play your move in the chess style match. I don't think there's many more dynamic things than wrestling, but I'm sure there's plenty of sports that would simulate a similar feeling.
Now, knowing that you have autism, the two coaches that coach you through high school and the one that you still go back to on summer break, how would you say they helped you participate in wrestling knowing you had autism? What did they do different? What did they do just like they do with everyone else?
Uh, they just told me what they wanted done and it got done. Not much of a difference there for any wrestler. Uh, it's a strange thing because you'll meet, in most cases, the coaches will just bluntly tell you what to do. I found out most wrestling coaches don't like hinting at things they want done. They'll normally tell you to do something and expect you to do it, and that'll be the end of it. They won't be like, well, I want you to do 10 push ups, but expect you to do 30 just because. They expect you to do 10, and that's the end of it. Or if they want you to do something else, they'll tell you. They don't like to mince words.
How about when you were in, let's say, high school? How did you adapt to high school? What types of things are out there for families that might not know? We were very fortunate with your social worker who helped us and also stood up for you. What are things that an autistic child can talk to with their parents and discuss at IEP meetings?
Well, let's go with resources out there first. WikiHows is silly as it sounds. They're a very good instruction manual for pretty much anything. And social cues are sort of in there. And if you read enough of them, they start to maybe make a bit more sense than the random abstract thoughts that they are for now. IEP meetings kind of were just rolling with how school's going. That'll depend on how your teachers are for that term, how everything's going course load wise and personally in your life. It changes based on how well you mesh with your teacher. A bad teacher or professor, assuming you're at the collegiate level, won't be the end of your academic career for that time, but it can make life so much more difficult if you're not able to express that to someone in a way that they can understand it easily.
Do you feel teachers are becoming more acceptable in trying to learn autism students, or do you feel you still need an advocate to speak on your behalf?
Most of my professors, at least recently, and in a majority of high school cases, are fairly understanding. However, getting the advocate, whether that's just the school designated one, and actually talking to them more than once a month or the blue moon that your IEP meetings held, was helpful because they were telling me what was going on and what I could use from the school. And even if you have every accommodation in the world, it doesn't help if you don't know you're allowed to use it or it's not explained how to use it. Because most, at least in my opinion, most schools will hand you a toolbox. Some will give you a how to manual with it, some will just hand you the toolbox and expect you to start doing things with it on your own.
Now, what was, um, because as I've told Russell growing up, this was all new to us. We did the best we could as parents. I think today he would say we did okay. But one of the things that Russell and I discussed not too long ago that really kind of smacked me in the face because as we started doing it, um, he was younger. And we raised Russell telling him you have to adapt to society, that your autism is not an excuse. So when he did go up to college, I made a comment, well, maybe you need to talk to this professor and explain your autism, and he could figure out how to help you with the course. And he said, but it's not an excuse. So how did
Uh,
you finally figure out what we were trying to raise you as to how you use it in your life now?
I'm still figuring that out. Uh, yeah, no, that was probably one of the more miscommunicated moments we've had. Just because I have autism, it doesn't make it an excuse for things, and you should never use whatever issues you're facing currently in life as an excuse. But on the flip side of this argument, it is always a reason. The reason that someone does something is not an excuse for it, but you need to understand why they're doing something if you want to help them change or improve upon it. If all my teacher has seen is I'm just not grasping some metaphorical concept, well, they can't do much beyond just the basic exercise. But if they know why I can't grasp the concept is because it's not being explained correctly in some format, that's a lot easier to help than just this vague misunderstanding.
Have you, because I know you struggled with this when you went to college because you were upset because, like he said, it was a miscommunication when we raised him. We wanted him to learn that you have to kind of figure your path in society and not use it as an excuse or a cop out. But since you and I sat down and actually discussed this, do you more advocate for yourself at college? Will you let people know you need it this way, like 1, 2, and 3, because their A, B, and C isn't making sense?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much a necessity at this point. It I don't use it as an excuse, or perhaps it can come across that way. But if I'm being given instructions that don't make any sense, I'm destined for failure from the start. And whether I prefer it or not, I have to tell people that this is just how I operate. Unfortunately, that's just how it works. I'm getting better at it and I'm constantly improving. But at certain points, I do need clarification for what seems like an obvious discussion topic. And if I don't get that clarification, you'll get work back that isn't absolutely horrible, but it won't be up to my standard simply because there's some miscommunication along the line.
Now, one last question that I'd like to ask. If somebody is watching this or sees the replay and they're a freshman entering college and they're going to be staying in a dorm, what's the best advice you can give them for being away from their home base out in a dorm by themselves?
A few suggestions for that one. Try and make some friends. I know that's like the most generic and cop out answer in the world. Make some friends that'll feel more like home. Uh, if you're going to a dorm, try to decorate it as much as you can and really make it your space. FaceTime, Skype, and the likes make it a bit easier to help with homesickness. Maybe explore your location. I guarantee you, no matter where you go, there's always going to be some interesting spots or a little crevice no one tends to go to hidden away. And maybe just if I'm assuming since you've gone to a dorm during college or you've moved out to become an employee in some location, try to make at least cordial relationships with your coworkers and fellow students and your professors. There's no downside to being polite and nice to someone because if you're polite and nice to them, normally they'll be polite and nice to you, and that just can make somewhere feel so much more welcoming. And try not to hide away. I know for a long time in my freshman year, I would always do all my homework and such within my little four walls of my dorm and hide away like a little hermit. But doing work within a common area or another public area gives you more opportunities simply because there's more people around and someone who's interested in what you're doing may come over and you can strike up a conversation or someone could even help you with what you're doing. And don't be afraid to ask for help from either your professors or tutoring services within uh, your university. There is literally no downside, and everyone needs help at some point.
Last question, and then we'll call it a night.
I thought that was last.
I thought of another one.
Oh, great. Okay, we're gonna
What
be here all
could
night.
you, now this is the last question, I promise.
Okay. Last
Because
question.
what would you want to say to a parent or an aunt or an uncle if they've heard that their son, their nephew, their grandson has autism? What could you offer them to try to become and have a bond with that child still?
Oh, I don't like questions like this. Use your face. Uh, the reason I don't like them, and no, it's not because I don't like talking about emotions or such, it's because it's different for everyone. What my advice that works for me could completely flop and be horrific and lead to your relationship burning to the ground for someone else. So I think the best advice, and as cheap as this is going to maybe sound, get to know them. Don't don't come in with preconceived notions just because you read an article or two or because this is what your parents did. You need to truly get to know the person you're talking to because you can't communicate with someone you don't know. And even if they're a little kid, if they're 6 or they're 4, or how old are you when you start talking? This
Usually one,
okay, well, coherently talking.
3, 4.
Okay, so when they're 3 or 4 and they start actually stringing sentences together instead of random noise gurgles, and they get older and they can actually comprehend what you're saying. Think, imagine you're talking to yourself almost. Don't treat them just like a child. Obviously, you need to have some parental rules and discipline, but they are another person and they can be shockingly insightful. So just because they're a child doesn't mean their questions are less valid or they need to be hushed and shoved away. The best thing you can honestly do is foster that curiosity and that just awe of life and the surprise and wonder they'll have because that'll take them into a much happier life than just being a cynical, pessimistic individual. And it costs you maybe a few extra minutes here and there to answer their questions.
Very good. I hope you found some value to this. I do know that I have quite a few followers that have special needs children or special needs family members. Russell was nice enough to offer his advice, and like he said, there's no two people that are the same. Autism or no autism, everybody is their own individual. And I would suggest that you figure out their strengths and their weaknesses, and it's going to be trial and errors. As a mom, I guarantee you throughout his life, I made a lot of errors, and we just worked through them because it was all new to me. But if you would like some tips
You
on
would get the best answer.
how to help a family member or your own child with autism, just send me a Facebook Messenger and I will get 10 tips out to you on how to help with autism and keeping your family unit as a family. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Russell, for your opinions and your thoughts from a point of view of having autism.
I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to say thanks, and I guess we can do this again if it works out. I don't know.
We will see. Maybe we'll come back with a part two.
Maybe.
If you want to see Russell again, drop it down in the comments to do a part two. And he said he'll do one.
Okay.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
See ya.
Talk to you later.